of you love the Lord today? Let me see your hand. You love, boy, you just love Jesus. Good. I have a question. What did you do this week for him? My Jesus, I love thee. Did we sing that a while ago? Good. Let's put it on the screen, would you? Give us a little note there, would you? Sing a little bit of it, would you? My Jesus, I love. I know thou art mine. For thee all the follies. Okay, stop right there. Stop. For thee all the follies of sin I resign. Have you really done that? Wait a minute, preacher. I thought we were just singing. No, I was at a funeral yesterday, and they sang some beautiful songs, but at the end of the funeral, they sang Going Up to the Spirit in the Sky. That's where I'm going to go when I die. Would y'all rather sing that? We're not going to the Spirit in the sky. We're going to go see Jesus someday. But when we go, you better be ready. My Jesus, I love thee. I know thou art mine. How many of you know he's yours today? Let me see your hand. Isn't that great? For thee all the follies of sin I resign. Let's keep going. Here we go. Here we go. I don't know what we're doing. Go to my gracious. Here we go. My gracious Redeemer, Savior art thou. If ever I love thee, 'tis now. We're going to sing the last verse, but we're going to pick it up a little faster, okay? In mansions of glory. That's what we're singing. Here we go. In mansions of glory and endless delight, I'll ever adore thee, so bright I'll sing with the glittering crown on my brow. So here we go. Wait. Here we go. You ready? Okay, we're done with you. Thank you. Here we go. If ever I love thee, my Jesus. Like right now. Isn't it easy to love him in church? I don't have to worry about the person next, well, there's nobody next to me, but you don't have to worry about the person next to you mocking you for loving Jesus. Right? Not here. Do we love him everywhere? Thank you, ma'am. You are dismissed. Yeah, let's give her a hand. Can we do that? Great job. Thank you, Ann. If you have your Bibles, go to Matthew chapter number 14. I just want you to love the Lord today. Absolutely. We love the Bible around here. I want you to love the Lord. The Lord wants you to love him, not the way we want to love him, but the way he wants us to love him. And I got to begin today with a confession. Anybody here ever done anything dumb? Okay, I have a yard man that helps with my yard, and he's been out of town, so he couldn't get to my backyard. Now, we're renting our house where we live, and you're going to be really thankful that I'm here today when I tell you this. Because I decided the house that we're renting has a swimming pool, and so there's not a tremendous amount of grass. So it's sometimes a little inconvenient to get a lawnmower back there, what my yard man has told me. So I decided, since he was out of town, that, what night was that, Friday night, I went out there, and what I did is I got the weed eater, but an electric one. Don't get ahead of me in my story, okay? So, yeah, there was water there. Yeah, a swimming pool has water in it, Aaron. Yeah, okay. So I'm out there and I'm mowing the yard. I'm weed eating the yard because there's just not that much. And I'm weeding and I'm like, okay, I just got to be careful because I don't want that cord to get in the water, right? That's probably not a good thing, right? And plus, this extension cord has got a couple of places where it's broken. and it's got black tape wrapped around it. Am I lying? No, I'm telling you the truth. So I'm out there and I'm weed eating the yard, and I keep thinking, I got to watch that, and then I forgot. And so I get out. Thank you, Donna. And so I get out, and I'm on the other side of the pool, and I turn around and look, and there's about 12 foot of that orange cord in the water. Why is that so funny? My life is at stake here. I would say one more step, and that black tape would have been in that water. I don't know what that would have done to me, but I can assure you it would have been a shocking experience, right? No doubt about that. Johnny, I'm living proof. God watches over the ignorant. Can I get a witness on that? He watches over us. In Matthew chapter number 14, we have an account. We have a historical account of a real event that took place. Isn't that good? This is not a fairy tale. It's not a made-up story. This is something that happened in the life of the disciples. Now, they just spent some time with more than 5,000 people. Jesus had been teaching, and when Jesus was teaching, when Jesus was preaching, the crowd would show up. And I mean, a big crowd had gathered. And Jesus took a little boy's lunch, prayed over it, 7 loaves of bread, 3 loaves of bread, whatever, 7 loaves of bread, 3 fish, something like that. It wasn't enough to feed 5,000 people. He blessed it and started handing it out, and it fed over 5,000 people. Amazing. Amazing. So Jesus, it's so ironic how that Jesus told the disciples, now you guys, I want y'all to go get in a boat, and I want you to go, and I'll meet you on the other side, and I'm going to disperse the crowd. That's kind of an ironic, seems to me like it'd be almost backwards, because nobody wants to leave if Jesus is there. Why didn't he get in the boat? You guys get rid of these people and meet me on the other side. Well, because they needed the boat to get on the other side. He didn't. That's one reason. Okay, and so he scatters them. He goes and he spends some time in prayer, and you know this event. You know what's happening. Let's look at Matthew chapter number, what did I tell you, chapter 14? We're going to begin reading in verse number 22. And straightway, Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him to the other side while he sent the multitude away. When he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into the mountain apart to pray. When the evening was come, he was there. He was all alone. He was there alone. But the ship, everybody say, but the ship, because I want you to get that. But the ship was in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night. Now, the fourth watch of the night would have been between 3 in the morning and 6 in the morning. That's the fourth watch. First watch of the night is 6 to 9. Second watch is 9 to midnight. Third watch is midnight to 3. The fourth watch is 3 in the morning to 6 in the morning. How many of you did not know that? I just made that up, so I did not. That's true. Fourth watch of the night would be between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. About the fourth watch of the night, this storm comes up, and the wind is contrary. We've been on the Sea of Galilee several times. It's 7 miles long, 3 miles wide. It's not a huge lake known as the Sea of Galilee, the Lake of Gennesaret, a lot of different names. But it's not that big. But there, on one side, you've got cities like we mentioned last week, Tiberias and Magdala and different places like that. On the other side it's mountainous. And so it was very easy for a storm to come sailing over that mountaintop, over those ranges. Still can happen today, still does happen today. Come down and immediately it's on that water and you don't have time to prepare. So they're out there, it's the middle of the night. And they don't know a storm. They haven't been watching Channel 5 News. They don't have that. And a storm comes, and they're in the midst of that storm, and on the fourth watch, between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning, it says, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. That's amazing, isn't it? Not just anybody can walk on the water. In fact, only Jesus can walk on the water. So it's an amazing thing. The Bible says, but And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled. I would be as well. For they said this, saying, it is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. Straightway Jesus spake unto them. Now, I don't know how this all went down. Tiger, I've tried to imagine. Waves are crashing here. Waves are rocking, wind is blowing, ship is going back and forth, and they're crying out with fear, and Jesus must have been at least close enough. The Bible doesn't tell us how close he was, but he's close enough to say, hey guys, it's me. Now, that's not exactly, be of good cheer. It's me. It is I. That's what he says. He calls out to them, and this is where the story gets weird, because Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. That's not one of his brightest moments. I mean, I'm not saying that, right? I'm not going to be, if I look and I see a spirit or see Jesus walking on the water, it wasn't a spirit, that was him in flesh and blood. Walking on the water, my first thought is not, can I come out there to you? My first thought was, do you need us to come get you? Right? How many of us would honestly say, Lord, can I come out there to you? We're not going to say that. That's not the most logical response or reaction to that. But only Peter would be the kind of guy that would do that. I mean, we know that about Peter, right? Peter's the one that if anyone is going to react in a shocking way, who's it going to be? If anybody's going to make a wisecrack, if anybody's going to reprimand Jesus, which he's already done, if anybody's going to say, if anybody's going to do something and then suddenly go, if anybody's going to say what he's thinking without thinking about what he's saying. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, he doesn't think this through. Walking on the water. Can I come out to you? And I love the fact that Jesus said, come. That's awesome. Come. Jesus said, it's interesting. Jesus didn't say, Peter, you can't do that. He didn't say that. You know why? He wanted Peter to understand that with the power of God on you, you can do things you never dreamed. You can do things that you never... Preacher, I can tell you this, boy. For me to be able to stand up and preach to a crowd of people is a miracle. You guys can be hurtful. It's a miracle. The first time I ever preached, when I was in high school, and I went to a Christian school, and it was a small Christian school, Bay City Christian Academy at Bay City Baptist Church in Bay City, Texas. And I've told you before, there were 3 in my graduating class. Valedictorian, salutatorian, and your pastor. But all 3 of us surrendered to preach. And they had, and so we had a night where we were going to preach, and they had us preach. And so I preached on the second coming of Jesus, a subject of which I was very familiar. In 7 minutes, I was done. 7 minutes. I know you're like, oh, where have those days gone? Too bad, so sad. Come. Hey, Peter, come on out here. And the Bible tells us when Peter was coming down out of the ship, don't you just love this? Nobody else is walking on the water. But look at me. We're not called to do what everybody else is called to do. We're not called to do what everybody else is doing. We're called to follow him. And the good thing about Peter, he did at least get permission, right? He didn't just jump out there without permission. He got permission, and then he walked on the water. Look, it says, and he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Isn't that amazing? How many of you have walked on the water for Jesus? None of us. But there's an application. How many of you have done something that you never thought you could do because you knew that God wanted you to do it and he empowered you to be able to do it? If you're a believer and your hand's not up, then you've missed something of the will of God for your life. You know why? Because the church in America is far too comfortable. We're just at ease. We don't branch out. We don't take chances. We don't do something. It's awkward. Preacher, it's just not in me to talk to somebody about Jesus. Well, get on your knees on this altar today during the invitation and ask God to put it in you, because He's commissioned you to do it. It's just not in me to teach a class or to work in the nursery. You know, my kids are grown. It's just not in me. I don't have to do that anymore. Well, what about this? What about if you say, you know what, I'm going to work in the nursery because we might have somebody show up that needs Christ, and if I'm in the nursery taking care of their child, they can listen to what God is saying to them, and they just might get saved because I was in the nursery. What a revolutionary thought. It's just called involvement. It's called doing a part and doing what we can and doing what even more than we can when God empowers us to do it. Man, I love that. Peter gets out and he walks on the water. You say, oh yeah, but it didn't last long. It was a lot longer than the other 11 guys. Right? I mean, there was only one that walked on water. He's got that. Can you imagine filling out his resume? Well, what kind of things have you done in your life, Peter? Well, I walked on water once. Sure you did. He did. He did. I love this. Look what it says. And when the wind was boisterous, verse 30, and he was afraid, he began to sink. He cried, Lord, save me. At least he knew who to call on. Have you heard that before? And immediately, aren't you glad Jesus didn't say, hey, you got out there, it's up to you, pal. You figure it out. I'm so glad to tell you, our God will not do that to us. If God calls you to something, He's going to help see you through it. He's going to walk that path with you. And when you get in trouble, obeying the Lord. By the way, why are they out in this boat in the storm? Jesus told them to go. Listen, this throws out all of this name it, claim it theology that you see. That's not biblical theology. It's satanic theology. God never intended. I'm on my phone last night, wherever it's at, and I'm looking at an article. These two televangelist preachers, one of them has just bought a $17.7 million jet, and the other one just bought an $18.3 million jet. But he had a screen in his church. You could see it. It said, so far we have 16 million of it. We need to raise another blah, blah, blah for my jet. Would y'all buy me a bicycle? Don't even do that, because I ain't going to ride it. All right? And you can tell I'm not going to ride it. Can you imagine? Listen, I don't want to be me when I stand before God one day, but I don't want to be either one of those guys. Obeying the Lord. Listen, God's called us to so much more. That's the whole point of this. God's called us to so much more. Here Peter is. The Bible says, and when he saw the waves, let's go on. When he saw them, he said, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? Why did you doubt? Oh, I'm going like, okay, Lord, that's a little harsh. That's a little tough. How can you say to Peter, O thou of little faith, when he's standing on the water with you? Correct? Hello? Right? He's on the... But look, listen, you got to see it through. Jesus is saying to Peter, if you'd have continued to trust me, we'd have walked back to the ship together without you ever going down. I believe that. But Peter looked around just like you and I do, looked around at all the circumstances, looking at the world around us, and the world is just going crazy. Can I get a witness? The world has lost its mind. They're like that guy on that movie. Hook. What's the guy's name that lost his marbles? Who? Noodle? I can't hear you. Noodle? That guy lost his marbles. Whatever his name was. I still don't know what his name was. I remember at the end of the movie, he found his marbles. I found my marbles. Anyway, moving on. I'm just saying, why did I bring that up? Because I've lost my marbles? Who said that back there? And when they were come to the ship, look at this. When they were come to the ship, what does it say? What does it say? When they were come to the ship, what? So this whole event on the water, waves are still rolling. Wind is still blowing. It's not over yet. And it doesn't end until they get in the ship. Isn't that amazing? That's incredible. I mean, they're out there. And I mean, what a story and a testimony to share. How do you walk on the water? What do you do? Preacher, in a spiritual sense, I want to walk on the water for Jesus. And by that, I mean, I want to do something, and I want God to use me to do something in this world that I could not do on my own. So how do you do that? How do you do that? I've got a couple of thoughts this morning, at least. You want to write them down? Here they are. Number one. I'm skipping stuff because it's so good. You read this story, a couple of things. This is before I get to what I was going to tell you. Listen, you realize obedience to Christ had placed him in the storm. Listen, and I love this. Permission from Christ had placed Peter on the water. Just an incredible thing. Have you ever been in uncharted waters? That's where Peter's at. Uncharted waters. Have you ever been bold enough? Have you ever been bold enough to ask God for the impossible? Have you really? What is it, and I don't want you to answer out loud, what is it you've asked God for in the realm of the impossible that God blessed and provided for you in your life? And I'm not necessarily talking about a monetary need. Although that may have been the case, I'm talking about just something in your life. You said, God, the first time I ever went to Israel, we were living in Graham. I was pastoring in Graham. We'd been there about 4 years. We had 2 children. My salary was like $450 a week. We couldn't afford to pay attention. I mean, we didn't have any money. And I'm just like, and a buddy of mine in Dallas called and said, hey, I'm going to Israel this May. Actually, we had 3 kids already. Thank you for correcting me. We had 3 kids already. And I just said, how much is it? And he said, it's $2,500. I'm like, y'all have a great trip. I couldn't afford that. I said, thank you for asking, but there's just no way. This is honest truth. That was one day. The next day, I'm sitting in my office. The next day, the phone rings, and the lady that was calling was not a member of our church. She had grown kids and grandkids that went to our church. But she didn't go to our church. But I knew her, she knew me. And she, with the Lord as my witness, she's like, Brother Jimmy, have you ever been to Israel? And I said, no. She said, I was sitting at home last night, and the Lord laid it on my heart to send you to Israel. I said, is that round trip or one way? Make sure the deacons weren't behind it, So she came by the church that day and wrote out a check for $2,500. I called my buddy back in Dallas, called Dal. You know who Dal is, Billy. I called Dal and I said, hey, I'm going to Israel with you. And I went to Israel. Now, you say, well, that sounds like a great thing. I'd like to say, man, I'd like to go to Hawaii, God. Can you provide that? It wasn't, the point of that illustration, it wasn't about going to Israel. It was about trusting and seeing God do something miraculous in your life. And God do something amazing. That's just, listen, so I give you these thoughts, and I'll be done. You ready? Here we go. If you're going to walk on the water, number one, you got to get out of the boat. I know you've heard that. When Peter was come down out of the ship, I mean, that's the high point of the story. Again, I don't mean disrespect. Jesus walking on water, like, that's cool. That's amazing. But he's God. I mean, he made the water. He can do anything he wants, right? So he's walking on the water. But for Peter, when he got out of the boat, man, I just love that. The second thing you have to do if you're going to walk on water, ignore the boat people. You know, guess what? This is going to be fun. I'm looking at some boat people. You hadn't been out of the boat. You ain't getting out of the boat. You've got 12 life jackets on. You are strapped to that boat. Hey, would you like to tell us your boat story, Josh? Josh had a great kayak story a couple of weeks ago. Okay, I'll tell it. I don't mind. So they were on vacation. He gets in a kayak. Now, you'll have to correct me, okay, because I'm going to make stuff up, okay? He's all by himself in a kayak, and he's going across the lake, and it started filling with water. And why was that? Oh, really? Okay, the plug was open. That sounds so much better than you exceeded the weight limit. It was a small kayak. Wait a minute, this is great, y'all. What? You had taken her kayak out. The plug was open. I didn't know that part. You exceeded the weight limit because you were in her kayak. Okay. Don't get on a boat with him in water. He has boat stories that you don't really want to be a part of. You can't listen to the boat people. And every church is filled with boat people. They haven't been out of the boat. They're not getting out of the boat. I was reading a story about an elderly lady that passed away, and nobody knew anything about her. They'd never heard of her doing anything in her life. They all knew who she was in this small town, but there was nothing about her. They were trying to come up with something to write. The editor in the newspaper was going to put something in the newspaper, and he was trying to write something and trying to think of something to put on her tombstone. And when he got back to the office, he ran into the sports editor who got the assignment. And so that sports editor in this small town he was the one responsible for writing something for her tombstone. So here's what he put. Here lies the bones of Nancy Jones. For her, life held no terrors. She lived an old maid. She died an old maid. No hits, no runs, no errors. Wonder what we would put on your tombstone. What would we put on your tombstone? Here's Bob. Sorry if your name's Bob. I always think of Bob. Here's Bob. He never did anything. He never served the Lord. As a believer, what would we put on your tombstone? I mean, that's the reality of it. And if you're going to do something for God, if you're going to walk on the water spiritually, so to speak, you cannot listen to the people around you. They're going to drag you down. They just will. People who walk on water recognize the presence of God. They ignore the people, the boat people. People who walk on the water get out of the boat. They discern between faith and foolishness. They accept fear as the price for growth. Did you get that? Remember when you taught, or maybe you're right now teaching your children to ride a bicycle? You've got to help them overcome the fear in order for them to be able to ride the bike, right? And you want them to ride a bicycle. And so you encourage them, you push them, you motivate them, you tell them you believe in them, you do all of those things. Why? Because you want them to overcome the fear of riding a bicycle so that they can ride a bicycle. And how much more important is our calling of God? Here's what I'm saying. Listen, only God can make a man walk on water. Only God can make a wave stand still. Only God can cause a blind man to see. Only God can make a lame man walk. I love what one man said. He was an alcoholic, drank all the time. He was a drunkard, not a drunkard, but he's an alcoholic, and lived with his family. And he got saved, and the Lord changed his life. And somebody asked him one time, "So what do you think? You think that Jesus turned the water into wine?" You know what he said? He said, "I don't know about that, but I know in my house, he turned the whiskey into furniture." What's he done in your life? Where you stepped out by faith and said, "God, I want to be counted among those who did not rust out because I did nothing. I want to burn out if I can for your glory. I want to get out of the boat and I want to walk on the water." Y'all know who Stuart Hamblin was? Stuart Hamblin, he wrote a song. It tells a story that he was a songwriter, but he was also a rebel rouser. He was a troublemaker. And he was in L.A. one time at a Billy Graham crusade, and he got saved. He was personal friends, Stuart Hamblin was. He was personal friends with John Wayne. Well, thank you for being impressed. John Wayne and Stuart Hamblin were talking, and Stuart Hamblin was telling him about his life being changed. And John Wayne said, "Well, you know, Stuart, it's true." And I can't do it in the way he would do it. But he said, "It's true. Everyone can see that your life's changed." In fact, he said, "We know God did something." And Stuart Hamblin said, "Yeah, you're right. Look what he's done. My life has been changed." And he said, "John, it's no secret what God can do." And John Wayne said to him, "Why don't you write a song?" And so he did. It is no secret what God can do, right? What he's done for others, he'll do for you. With arms wide open, he'll pardon you, because it is no secret what God can do. But he can't do it with people who are not willing to let him do it in their life. Have you walked on water lately? Have you ever walked on water? God is looking for some people who are willing to get out of the boat and say, "God, use me. Use me for your glory." Would you bow your heads, please? Heads bowed and eyes are closed.